Hello everyone. Welcome to Global Supply Chain Management module again. This is Dr. Mandeep Saini, and in this session we are going to talk about time, cost and quality in a supply chain. You might have heard about three constraints of a project: time, cost and quality. This session is all about understanding how time, cost and quality works in a supply chain. And what do we do with time, cost, and quality in a supply chain? So in the last session, we have talked about what are global supply chain management. Now we talked about global, which is globally. We talked about supply chain, our supply chains, which is not just one chain of supplying goods, material or the services. The several chains join together, combine together and become one supply chain. And management, which is monitoring and controlling of a supply chain. Now let's have a look at types of manufacturing process to understand a bit more about the supply chain and how the supply chains are evolving and how the supply chains are moving forward towards a different trend. Now, if you look at this diagram gives us the type of manufacturing process. Now, on one side of the diagram, which gives the product variety from low to high. On the other side of the diagram, that gives the production or the operation volume from low to high. So it's moving from low to high on x-axis and product variety low to high on y-axis. Now in that, we got four different type of manufacturing process which we consider in the operations. Now over here, when we look at the first one here, so what used to happen? Earlier, we used to produce product and services in a continuous flow. In continuous flow, we are trying to produce something continuously without stopping 24/7, 365 days. So that is called process or continuous flow production, which is 24/7 production all over the year and which has very high volumes of the product and very low variety, or there is no variety, just very high volume of one single product producing 24/7, 365 days, and the machines are working all the time. Now this type of production, nowadays we see that type of production in some of the petrochemical refineries, where they are refining the petrol because they are removing the petrol from the earth and they are refining continuously and making into something else. It could be the steel making, it could be the paper making, or it could be the beer brewing. Now there are several different examples that we are doing. We are continuously manufacturing those products continuously as a process. That is called either process or continuous flow production. We are manufacturing something 24/7, 365 days. Now, since the consumer behavior has been changing because consumer get bored with something very quickly, so there is new trend came into existence that we don't have to manufacture the same product with the same packaging, with the same color, with the same style anymore. People are looking for different colors, different styles in the same product. So as an example, I would say these photo frames that would come in black, white, gray, red, or different colors. So people can buy those photo frames based on their interior, based on what color they like, or based on what is suitable for their wall color. Maybe the contrast, maybe the same color, or anything. Now, if that photo frame comes in black only or white only, some of the people might not buy that product. So nowadays the products are coming into more variety. So if that photo frame, we can see that is in black, but at the same time, if people need in white, so that is two varieties, so black and white. If you manufacture those frames in more color, let's say gray, red, then that become four different type of variety. Even though it is the same frame, it is going to serve the same purpose, same A4 size frame, but that has a variety to serve more number of people. So that is where we come up with mass flow or inline production, not continuous anymore. We got mass flow or inline production. Mass production, which has low variety but still has the high volume, but there is some variety. In the containers, we had very low variety but very high volume. Now in mass production, where we have low variety and high volume, not very high, not very low. Now if we look at this graph and look towards the y-axis where we got variety, so this is standing over here, but in the continuous and flow production the variety is very low. Over here the variety is low, but there is still some variety. So if I take that example again, in this photo frames, these photo frames, if we look at, we are manufacturing in a process or continuous flow, so then we are manufacturing the same size in high or very high volume in the same color. So there is no variation to this product. But now we got variation because we are manufacturing these photo frames in red, gray, white, black, green, or maybe several other colors as well. So that is because the consumer are looking for more and more variety. But some of the examples of that is automobile plants, where you have the same car which has different specs. Some of the variations in the features of that car. So if you go to buy, let's suppose you're going to buy a Kia Sportage. In Kia Sportage, they have four different models. So for example, they have spec 1, spec 2, spec 3, spec 4, and in 4 they have a GTS model as well. At the same time, they have those specs 1, 2, 3, 4 in petrol and in diesel. Nowadays in hybrid and electric as well. So that is becoming high variety, which is higher than the mass or the higher than the process and the continuous production. So slightly higher variety. But that is again the trend. The customers are still not satisfied. The customer want more variety because the trend is, the consumer behavior is, they are getting bored very quickly. If you buy a new car today, after a couple of years time, you might get bored with the car and you might think that, okay, I need a new one now, because the new cars are available with much more or much better features. So you go for a new car. Same thing, the iPhone comes out. Every time a new iPhone comes out, people need a new iPhone. Every year they need a new model, even though they don't need it. It will function in a similar way. You can still take the call, you can still make a call, you can still browse the app, you can still browse Facebook, other applications, but people still need a new iPhone because people are getting bored with the old things and they are always looking for the new feature. So when that trend is moving, the supply chains are evolving as well. Now we are moving towards the batch production. So when we talk about batch production, in which we are talking about medium variety, medium volumes, and medium quantities. So the quantities are less, volumes are less, but varieties are increasing in comparison with mass flow inline production and continuous flow production. In batch production, now how that batch production work? Again, as an example, if we take the car Kia, and that has four different specification in Kia Sportage. In Sportage, what they are going to do, they are not manufacturing spec 1 1000 pieces, or spec 2 another 1000 pieces, and spec 3 another 1000 pieces. So they are, what they are doing, maybe in one day they are manufacturing hundreds of spec 1, which is the batch production, which is one batch. Then another day they are manufacturing another 100, which is spec 2, that is the second batch of spec, that is the first batch of spec 2, and then spec 3 on the third day, which is first batch of spec 3. So they are doing the batch production where the variety is high, so they can fulfill the demand for spec 1, spec 2 and spec 3 at the same time or as early as possible. Why? Because consumer doesn't want to wait. So as an example, a new iPhone came out today. It is on pre-order, but you always want that phone as early as possible. If the waiting time is, let's suppose, 30 days from the day of pre-order, you always think that, okay, I need to get it as early as possible. Is it possible to reduce that lead time and get the iPhone as early as possible? So once you know that that iPhone is available at one of the store which is not nearby where you live, but 30 miles, 40 miles away, and you can get it today if you go and buy it from there, you are most likely willing to travel to buy that iPhone on the same day. That is how the consumer behavior is changing. Now, some of the examples could be drugs and pharmaceuticals, the chemical industry, they are using the batch production. Even though wine and liquor, you might have seen on wine bottle that they has a batch number, specifically on the limited edition. So that batch number on the spare parts or on some of the product, that gives us a batch number as well. That batch number, through that batch number, we can track that if there is any problem or anything, we can always track that batch number, and we can always track down to the material, the quality of the material, the supplier and all that. In a nutshell, what is happening, where the trend is moving, that people are now looking for more and more variety because of the consumer behavior is changing. Now finally, we are moving towards job shop production, which is more like small projects. In job shop, we got very high varieties of the product is being produced in the very small quantities and very low volume as well. So low volume and very high variety. That could be the print shops. For example, you go to university print shop and you ask them to print your assignment. Okay, that is just one job for them. It start and it end within few minutes time. That is just one job. For an example, restaurants, even though they have the entire operation, they are cooking the whole day, the kitchen is very busy in the evenings or in the afternoon, but when somebody go and order for something specific, that becomes a job for them. Nowadays, manufacturing process has the element of the job shop production, the element of batch production, the element of mass flow or inline production, and the element of continuous flow production as well. Now those four type of manufacturing process, we can see those manufacturing process in different scenarios within an organization as well. Like the example I given you of restaurant. A restaurant could be a restaurant where you are having buffets, where you are having different type of sitting arrangement, or where you are serving different type of items. So they can use job shop production, they can use batch production, they can use mass production and continuous production. Now, why we are looking at that manufacturing process in terms of supply chain? Because the trend is changing. Now, the consumer trend is not about high volume. The consumer trend is about high variety, because the mindset is changing, their behavior is changing, and that is why supply chains need to be changed as well. So the supply chain, the behavior of the consumer, they need high variety. Even in iPhone, they have very high variety as well. So for example, iPhone 14 Pro, iPhone 14, iPhone 14 Pro, iPhone 14 Pro Plus, iPhone 14 256 GB, iPhone 14 500 GB or 512 GB, iPhone 14 1 terabyte, and so on. There are so many varieties. After that, they have several different colors in it. So that is the variety. So people can pick and choose whichever they look for. Now, when we have several different type of varieties in iPhone, I would say that when they are manufacturing the screen of iPhone Pro, so that screen can be manufactured in maybe batch production. They have batches that, okay, they have to manufacture 10,000 screens in one day for today for iPhone 14 Pro, and then next 10,000 tomorrow for iPhone 14 Pro Plus, which is slightly bigger size. But for color of the cover, they can have, okay, based on the demand, we just need to manufacture, we just need to color 500 phones in green, 500 in red, 700 in midnight blue, or 1000 in silver based on the demand. So the consumer behavior is changing. Now, what those organizations are trying to do, they are trying to give mass customization at job shop production, mass customization or mass personalization to the consumer, that they have a lot of variety available to pick and choose. So that is why we need to understand the type of manufacturing process, so we can learn about those type of manufacturing process and how those fit into a supply chain. Now, what do we do with time, cost, and quality in supply chains? When we consider time, and we try to consider, because the consumer behavior is changing, as the example I given you, that if you need a new iPhone which just been introduced in the market and you need it as early as possible, so the lead time to deliver that iPhone need to be reduced, so we can fulfill your demand, your desire, what you're looking for. Because if you don't get the iPhone on time, you might buy a Samsung phone or any other phone. You might go to a competitor of iPhone. Now, to avoid that, we don't want to lose any of the customers that our customers are going to our competitor. To avoid that, we need to reduce the time, which we call is time compression. At the same time, we try to reduce the cost of the product. If an iPhone is minimum 2,500 pounds, most likely many of the people are not going to buy it. They might go and buy a Samsung phone. Now we have to match, or sometimes we have to compete in terms of the cost and in terms of the pricing of the product with our competitors as well. So over here we try to reduce the cost, but at the same time we produce the quality standards for that product. That if you try to reduce the cost and you use material which is not as per the standard, the quality, the output quality might not be as per the standard as well. Now let's look at these things one by one. Now, time in supply chain management. Time plays an important role in all the supply chains. Either it's domestic or a global supply chain. Now, in time in supply chain, as I mentioned, that we try to reduce or try to compress the time in a supply chain, and specifically the lead time or the production time or the takt time. Now, in time, the time in supply chain, for example, you order something to a retailer, and retailer that don't have that in stock, and they are going to order it to the warehouse. Now, the time taken from the time you ordered something to the retailer and retailer ordering it to the warehouse, and warehouse is going to ship the product to you. The entire to the retailers, ship the product to retailers, and retailer will ship the product to you. The time taken from the date and time of order, you ordering the product to the retailers, and you are receiving the product, that is the lead time. Another example, if you buy something from online, any e-commerce website, or you buy it from Amazon. Let's say you buy something from Amazon. So you go to Amazon, you order something on Amazon. Amazon promised you that they will be delivering that with the prime delivery, which is next day delivery. And the next day it arrives. So for example, you ordered something 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and next day it arrived by 5 p.m. So the time taken, which is 24 plus 4, 28 hours, is the lead time for you to receive that product from Amazon. Now, since the consumer behavior is changing, you need something now. If you know that similar product is available in the local market, which is just 5-minute walk from your residence, you might go there and buy the product from there because you need it now. You need it there and then. You don't want to wait for Amazon to deliver it next day or 2 days time or 3 days time. So if you, let's suppose Argos is selling something, or any other local shop is selling something which you need, and it is available just within 5 minutes time, so you just need to walk there, buy it, and use the item. So you would prefer, or the consumer will prefer, to do that in a sense. Now what is happening over here, we try to reduce that time that it can be delivered to you as early as possible. The same thing happened between the warehouse and the manufacturer. When retailer order to warehouse order to manufacturer, because we are working on batch production or the job shop, when we receive an order, then only we manufacture. Since the consumer behavior is changing, the demand is uncertain because we don't know how many green iPhones are going to sell within this week, how many red iPhones are going to sell within this week, or how many silver or midnight blue are going to sell within this week. And that is where the data analysis comes in. We analyze the data of demand, how much demand is coming to us, and based on that demand we manufacture that product. So when we manufacture that product, so same example again, retailer order something to warehouse order something to manufacturer might not keep the inventory of material in-house. They might need to order the components, they might need to the component supplier might need to order to material processing as well. Now, we need to reduce the time, which is the lead time in the entire supply chain. Now, the problem here is to reduce the lead time, one of the way is to keep inventory at every stage. So they don't, when the order comes to warehouse, they should have that in stock. If they don't, then the retailer might order it to some other warehouse or some other supplier. Same thing, if the warehouse order to manufacturer, if they don't have the material in stock, they can't manufacture. And if they have to order the material, it will take additional lead time. So in that way, lead time is increasing and customer have to wait for a long time. So one of the way is to keep the inventory at each of the stage in the supply chain. So the component production, keep the raw material so they can manufacture it as quickly as possible. The manufacturing, they have to keep the components so they can assemble the product as early as possible. Warehouse, they need to keep some inventory as well, and so they can send the product to the retailer as early as possible. Now that is just one way, but this way nowadays is not a fruitful way to reduce the time scale of your supply chain. So what can we do? That is what we are going to learn in other sessions. One of the way is to reduce the inventory and be reactive and responsive to the demand, that we can manufacture something very, very quickly and try to develop a fast or ultra fast supply chain. Now, this could be very quick if your supply chain or your suppliers are based locally. But when your suppliers are based in global markets, maybe in China or Far Eastern countries or in Africa or in USA or anywhere else, then it could be a very large time span or very big lead time. That is where the problems are. So another way could be having the local supplier. But having the local supplier, again, that is a trade-off. Having a local supplier might have much costly components or much costly materials as well. So we have to look at those trade-offs, and we will look at those trade-offs later on in other sessions. Now, when I mentioned about cost, when we are trying to compress the lead time, it always has a connection with the cost. So either we keep the inventory. When we keep the inventory, that is an excess cost, because we have to keep the inventory. We need some space to keep the inventory. We need somebody to take care of the inventory as well. So that is additional cost. And having inventory or high amount of inventory or large volumes in our warehouses or in our manufacturing or assembly or in our component production, having that inventory is a large cost as well, because we have to pay for the inventory, we have to keep that inventory in stock, and we have to maintain that inventory as well. So we try to avoid, because keeping inventory is not helping to reduce the time compression in much efficient way, but it is more likely increasing the cost of keeping the inventory, and that will consist in the cost of the final product, because whatever the cost of the operations, whatever the cost of inventory, we have to make some profit at the end of the day. So if we are keeping inventory, that is adding the cost to the manufacturing or supplying of the final product or the services. So we try to reduce the cost in our supply chain. For that, reducing the inventory and reducing the waste, which is inventory is one type of waste, is really important. So we can reduce the cost of production of any products or the services which is required to reduce the cost, so we can compete in the market against our competitors. Now in quality, as I mentioned earlier, so when we think about quality, reducing the cost of material and buying substandard material, that is not a relevant thing. So because buying a substandard material will have input of substandard material in our transfer when we in our manufacturing, when we transform that material into a product or use substandard component to manufacture something, that will give substandard output as well. And when we have substandard output and that substandard product goes to the customer don't like it, they will be dissatisfied and they will return the product to you. That has an extra cost in the entire operations of your supply chain. So we have to reduce the time, we have to reduce the cost, but at the same time, we have to maintain this standard quality. Now, when we talk about quality, there are several different definitions of qualities. Quality is all about perception of the consumer, of the customer. That is what we need to remember. Now, the quality of iPhone is excellent quality for me, but quality of iPhone might be good quality for you. So if we take that into that measure, if we rate iPhone from 1 to 10, some of you might rate it 10, some of you might rate it 9, some of you might rate it as 8 and 7 and 5 and 6. So the quality of a product depends on person to person. So we have to make sure that we have a standard quality that on an average everybody will like it. And again, there is a trade-off between time compression, cost reduction, and quality improvement. Reducing time can impact on quality, reducing cost can impact on quality as well. So this is what we are going to learn further, that how we can reduce the cost, time, and at the same time we enhance the quality of our product and services in the supply chain. Now, for you to understand more about time, cost, and quality, I'm giving you an exercise. You just need to develop a supply chain diagram for a barbecue event for international students. And that barbecue event could be at RKC campus or anywhere. Your budget is £10,000, which is British pound. You can take that into your own currency. It could be euro, 10,000 euros, or it could be $10,000, or you can take any kind of currency. We are thinking about 500 students are going to attend that event, and the total duration is 6 hours. So the cost is given, the budget is given, not the cost. The budget is given. Number of people, your customers are given, that those are students and specifically the international students. Duration is 6 hours, the time is given as well, and the venue is given as well. Now you need to think about what is needed and where will you get it. Where will you get it and what is needed based on the budget, based on the number of people, based on the time scale and the venue. So if you work on that exercise, I believe you really enjoy it. Come up with a plan for a barbecue event for international students. Now, thank you very much for having me on